Mughal Empire in India, rise and fall in 6 minutes. So back in the early 16th century, this guy called Babur comes riding into India with a small army of less than 20,000 men. It's the year's 1526, and he was going to change the course of Indian history forever. Not only did he defeat the reigning Sultan of Delhi at the First Battle of Panipat, but his descendants would go on to rule most of northern India for the next 2 centuries. He had a lot of addictions, including opium and alcohol, and he appointed a regent to rule in his place while he went off to enjoy himself. The provinces became more and more autonomous, and the central authority couldn't really do much to stop them. And then there were the revolts. There were revolts by the Rajputs, the Marathas, and other groups who didn't want to be ruled by the Mughals anymore. The economy was stable, the arts flourished, and there was peace throughout the land. He was a strict, uncompromising ruler who wanted to impose Islam on his subjects. And so by the end of his reign, the Mughal Empire was in sharp decline. The provinces were practically independent. The army was weak, and the treasury was empty. And then there were the constant rebellions. By the end, it seemed like everyone wanted to overthrow the Mughal emperor. They ruled for over 2 centuries, and they left behind a rich cultural legacy. And if you want to learn more about ancient India, check out my series on ancient India. Thanks for watching. But they also made some big mistakes, and those mistakes ultimately led to their downfall. And it wasn't just the outside forces that were causing trouble. Aurangzeb's own children turned against him, and there were multiple attempts on his life. He raised taxes, he restricted artistic expression, and he even banned alcohol. This made him very unpopular, especially among the Hindus. His successors were weak and ineffective, and the real power was starting to slip away from the central government. By the mid-18th century, the Mughal emperors were little more than puppets of the British East India Company, which had been steadily gaining power in India since the 17th century. And by the early 19th century, the company had complete control over the subcontinent. Aurangzeb also tried to expand the empire, but he didn't have much success. He did manage to conquer some territory in South India, but he couldn't hold on to it for long. And then there was the constant threat from the Marathas, who were never really happy with Mughal rule. Except for that time when he decided to invade South India and failed miserably. Yeah, that was not a great moment for the Mughal Empire. After that defeat, Shah Jahan lost a lot of prestige and power. On the one hand, you had all those internal issues, the weak rulers, the rival princes, the constant rebellions. And then, on the other hand, you had the outside threats, the European powers, and the Marathas. But maybe the biggest reason of all was the fact that the Mughal emperors were so darned obsessed with building stuff. Sure, we have the Taj Mahal to thank for that, but think about all the money and resources that went into building all those monuments. If the emperors had spent that money on, say, a stronger military or more efficient administration, maybe they would have been able to hold on to power a little longer. But no, they wanted to build more tombs and mosques and forts, and that's what they did. And in the end, it cost them everything. His rivals within the empire saw this as a chance to take over, and they started to plot against him. And then there were the external threats. British and the Portuguese were starting to encroach upon Mughal territory, and they were on very friendly neighbors, let me tell you. Shah Jahan tried to resist them, but he couldn't really do much. And eventually he was overthrown by his own son Aurangzeb, who had been plotting against him for years. And the Mughal army started to get weaker, too. They used to be a formidable fighting force, but now they were starting to lose battles against the smaller, more autonomous provinces. But the regent soon took over Jahangir's throne completely, making Jahangir an emperor in name only. Why? Well, mostly because of the Taj Mahal. This white marble mausoleum was built during his reign in Agra, and it was originally meant to be the tomb of his favorite wife. It took 22 years to complete, and it cost an estimated $32 million in today's money. But Shah Jahan didn't just build the Taj Mahal. He also built a lot of other stuff. It's like the Red Fort in Delhi and the Jama Masjid, one of the largest mosques in India. He also continued his father's policy of religious tolerance. Even though he faced some opposition from the more conservative elements of his empire. Now Jahangir might have been out of power, but he was still living large thanks to his wife Nur Jahan, who basically ran the show from behind the curtains. She was a strong leader who helped her husband stay on the throne, even though he wasn't really fit to rule. And she was also a patron of the arts, like her husband's father before her. Now, Babur's empire was pretty small at first, but his grandson Akbar would expand it to include most of the Indian subcontinent, and his reign is often referred to as the Golden Age of the Mughals because of his religious tolerance, his art, and his relatively non-violent rule. One historian describes his court as a kind of United Nations where everyone was welcome, regardless of their religion or ethnicity. And it was during Akbar's reign that the famous saying, Sath Pitri, Asath Sarkar, arose, meaning there are 8 ways to make money, 9 to spend it. Akbar was a man who liked to live large. For example, he abolished the jizya tax on non-Muslims, which made him very popular among the Hindus. He also encouraged the practice of interfaith dialogue, even hosting debates between theologians of different religions. And these debates were not just theoretical either. He actually put his beliefs to the test by inviting Christian missionaries to set up schools and hospitals. And Akbar wasn't just religiously tolerant, he was also racially tolerant. He employed both Hindus and Muslims in his administration and even had a non-Muslim wife. In fact, his son Jahangir was born to a Hindu mother. Akbar was also a patron of the arts, helping to develop Mughal architecture, painting, and poetry to new heights. But unfortunately, Akbar's son Jahangir was a bit of a problem. But despite her efforts, the empire started to fall apart at the seams. Now, Jahangir died in 1627, and his son Shah Jahan took over. And Shah Jahan is probably the most famous Mughal ruler today. Now, Shah Jahan's reign was a pretty prosperous one. Aurangzeb was not like his father. Aurangzeb ruled for 35 years, and that's a long time to be messing up your empire. When Aurangzeb died in 1707, the Mughal Empire was on its last legs. There are a lot of reasons why the Mughal Empire fell. The Mughals were one of the richest and most powerful dynasties in Indian history. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more.